All right. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining in. This is yet another episode of the C-Suite Reflection Room. And today we are diving into the topic of investigating AI in organizational development and talent. Today I have with us our esteemed guest, Dr. Jonathan Troper, who is a director at a professional practice university. He has led a large number of OD consulting projects, and his expertise primarily lies in industrial and organizational psychology. He also has a lot of expertise around leadership assessment, development, organizational change, training strategies, employee surveys, and several other attributes of organizational development. Today, he's here with us to share his expertise on several of these topics and how AI can play a role in this. So, welcome, Dr. Jonathan. It is a pleasure to have you with us here.
Thank you, Maxim, and folks from Eubrics. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and with the folks who've joined us this morning, this evening. And good morning, everybody. Good evening, everybody, depending on where you are.
Thank you, Jonathan. So, Jonathan, we can start with something about this topic. Since we are talking about AI in organizational development and talent, what would be your first thoughts about how this is progressing, right? So we will dive deeper into specific topics of the subject, but what are your broad thoughts on overall AI being in organizational development and talent?
So, my experience is that people are all over the map with regard to how enthusiastic or cautious they are about AI. And I've noticed that people respond to the leaders in the organization creating either a safe container for them or doing something other than that. And that shapes their sense of permission to go ahead and do things with AI. Everybody hears about the things that go wrong. That's all over the news. And everybody has seen at least something that's breathlessly excited about whatever the next model is that has just come out. And people say that it can create sliced bread from flour in minutes. And this huge range is what we have to work with. And I understand most of the folks who are on this webinar are people working in learning and development, organization development, or organizational leadership with the people area adjacent to their portfolio. And I think it's important to understand where the people are in the organization that you're in, whether you're consulting to an organization or you're inside of an organization. And by the way, I'll be speaking from my own perspective, not as a representative of my university. And as a user of AI who's seen different ways that people are approaching AI and has tried AI in a variety of niche topics and seen incredible differences between the capabilities that it brings to one topic, and then you give it what you think is a similar topic, and then it falls apart. So I've seen all of that, and it'll be interesting, Maxim, to talk with you about your technical expertise to fill in where I've noticed gaps, because I think that's really important for people to hear. So thank you for opening this up. One of the first questions I heard from you and Nikita was, how much can we trust AI and the answers that it gives to our prompts? And I think the answer to that is there, as Ethan Mollick Mollick, for those who want to read his oneusefulthing.org Substack newsletter. He talks about the jagged frontier, where AI is advancing, but it's really forward in one area and backward in another area, and they can be right adjacent areas adjacent to each other. So it's hard to predict just because one prompt on one topic worked that the same prompt on or an adjusted version of that on an adjacent topic, you can't assume it's going to work. You have to try it out. So that makes it exciting for some people because they're curious, they love to explore. And learning about AI is all about exploration. It's fine to take a course. It's great to read people's prompts, to read like Substack newsletters and other sources. But you really don't get it until you try it. And you don't have to worry about it blowing up, but you do have to be concerned about what data you provide it, because data privacy is continually in question. And just a few days ago, OpenAI had to respond to a judge in the case the New York Times brought against OpenAI for stealing their material, that the requirement the court was putting on OpenAI starting a few days ago to keep all of the prompts and all of the conversations that people have with ChatGPT and the other OpenAI GPTs. And, that actually makes it harder for privacy because people want to be able to delete their conversations and know that it's been deleted for good, and that it won't get used in training of future AIs, etc. So people need some support to keep the data protected. And I don't think individuals are in a position to do that well inside of organizations. They really need an umbrella shielding them. So how much can we trust AI and the answers it gives our prompts? I'll give an example of something where I blew one of my colleagues' minds by what I was able to produce with Claude. Back then it was 3.7. And then I told him about the huge gaps. So I needed to prepare students with a practice exam on statistics. We have a practice exam, it's got its answers, but they need to be able to have something on each of the topics that we know they're going to need to learn about, or rather to relearn, because this is post-course practice exams, keep them fresh. And when I asked Claude for the first 2 runs of the exam, I realized first that a short prompt was not going to get it to produce exactly what I wanted, even though some of the breathless newsletters had been saying that Claude and GPT 4.0 could be given brief prompts and they understood the human desire for whatever the topic was, and therefore would know enough about the context to respond appropriately. So that is true some of the time on some topics, but it wasn't true in this arena. The first really good exam that it produced, once I had a very detailed prompt and told it what sorts of misunderstandings students have and what range of students capabilities we have. And for those of you who are in learning and development, know that your audience analysis needs to be good in order to design a training program that's going to meet your audience where they are. So it did a much better job once I told it that, described the students and told it we're a professional practice university, not a research one university. I got my PhD at a Research One university, UCLA, and I know how much they prized depth of understanding in some methodological area. It was either statistics or qualitative, and those are two different cultures. So the I ran it by our statistics expert in order for him to judge whether the questions were appropriate, as I thought they were at that point, and whether the answers were correct, and whether the explanations given, I wanted two different levels of explanation, one for people who just want to know why is the correct answer correct, and another for people who want to know a heck of a lot more. They want context, fundamentals, and for Claude to give it a deep explanation for those people. His mind was blown. He had no idea you could do this with AI. But once he got into the exam items and the explanations, he said, I've helped about 1,000 students, and there are so many misunderstandings that you see repeated among students, and it's clear that the AI doesn't get all of that yet. And so he made a lot of adjustments, and I learned from his adjustments, put it into a next prompt, and put that into Claude, and we'll see how he responds to the next exam. But what this tells us is that when you ask it to design training and practice and give it content that you want it to be able to answer questions on, unless you provide it a lot of content in the background, it may go in a direction you weren't expecting, or that's not a good match for the learning audience. Maxim, here is where I think it would be really useful for you to talk about how Eubrics uses RAG in order to solve that problem, and maybe say something about how far it can go.
Right. So Jonathan, thanks a lot for sharing your perspective on how the LLMs work and where we can trust it and where it can go wrong. And what you have said is especially spot on. LLMs are really good in terms of picking a short sentence or a short query and giving a detailed, confident answer out of it, right? Which is based on a lot of assumptions. So the shorter the information it has, the more assumption it makes. So that is something to be a little cautious about, because it may be fundamentally right, but contextually wrong, right? Because you may have some context which you have in your mind, but a LLM will not be able to pick it up unless you specify that, right? So that is something which is important. That every time you're prompting an LLM, it is very important to give it as deep context as possible. If not in the first go, just try to give it more and more context as it responds back to you, and you see a miss. Just try to give it more context which fits your scenario, right? So that is something which is very, very important. And what is traditionally happening as a improvement of the LLM, or how AI in itself is evolving, is that as time goes by, the context window, right, how much context a prompt can hold over a period of time, that is becoming bigger and bigger. And it is now trying to reach a point where it can hold an entire code base of an application also, right? It is extremely large. You can consider it that it can have several books within one single context, right? So that is the size of the context that is being that it's trying to achieve, right? It is trying to slowly get there. So context window becoming bigger is one way that AI is trying to have more details which can fit the response into, and something which is the RAG model, which has been there for quite some time, right? So what a RAG model does is that you have your own context, which is kept in a separate system or a separate database, and we use a comparison logic just in simple terms, right? If you have, let's say, 500 pages of a PDF which is kept in this RAG model, and you're asking a query on one specific pointer. Let's say this has your entire documentation about your learning journey, all the formats of it, different courses of it, and you want to create one learning journey for one specific role, it is able to match which are the relevant content pieces from the RAG model for this and supply only those to the prompt. And this way, now it picks the required context from the RAG model, and your LLM is able to use its own Bayes intelligence in addition to the, and it applies that along with the context that was provided to it and then gives a response. So that is a typical way that is being solved right now, and it is evolving as we speak. So that is broadly how Jonathan context is solved for. And even at Eubrics, we try to do that in different ways, where we try to give, when we are trying to do a development journey for, or trying to give a AI mentor in our OD, organizational development platform, we feed the system, the AI system, with which industry does this person belong to, what is the role, what are some parts of this personality. If we have already done assessments, we also kind of know what kind of psychometric profile this person has. We also know what kind of learning agility, how frequently does the person come onto the system, what the person has asked before, what are his different styles of communicating with the AI, and all of that feeds as a context. And the longer you use our system, the better it gets in giving recommendations to you. So that is how, in a nutshell, we at Eubrics try to bring the context to the user. And as AI evolves, I think this context window is going to be a make or break factor, right? How big the context window can become will entirely determine how much AI can evolve.
Great, thank you. And I see that it's struck, what you're saying has struck a chord with some folks. The Now the next question, I think, is what you do as an organization when you've got employees who have done all that experimentation and have a sense, for an intuitive sense for the different LLMs and what their capabilities are, and the different topic areas they could ask about or call for a deliverable about, and feel comfortable that the AI may not respond the way you want, or it may blow your mind with something amazing. And much of the time it's somewhere in between. So what I've noticed is that when leaders decide for the people in their organization, and there are some public cases of this that have been in the press recently, how that they're all going to have to become AI experts, and here's what they need to be doing, that risks leaving some people who've got great skills in their specific areas, but that they've been cautious for a reason, different reasons for different people. But if you don't unlock that discussion and make it safe for people to say the reason I've been cautious is, and to see the diversity of reasons that people have, your organizational policy may end up squeezing people out. It will make some people very excited. And so you might say, well, maybe we can pair a prompt engineer with a specialist. And there are people who have been saying, since the LLMs have gained incredible achievements in 2025, that the job of prompt engineer is not going to be the big job of the future, but rather that prompt engineering capability is going to need to be democratized, because the best prompting is done by people who have specialized knowledge, and they're writing prompts about that specialized knowledge, and they know how to write prompts. And that takes practice. Some people need it, structured courses for it. Other people need to see examples. And then there are two very different kinds of AI out now. One is the LLMs that we're used to, and the other is agents, where you can design a series of agents to do different pieces of a task. So for those of you who are in learning and development and you love to do task analysis, your capability, your superpower in task analysis, it becomes really important in prompt design. And it will also become really important in the design of agents. Not an agent, for those of you who are still learning some of the terminology, is able to make decisions without you there. You still have to give it a prompt. You have to give it some expertise. You have to tell it what its role is. And usually people design or companies design an agent team with specializations. And so there's a workflow. This is where the task analysis comes in. One agent like takes the order from the client, the next agent, and that agent takes the order, interprets it into words and images that need to be produced for the client. Let's say it's an agents group that's producing PowerPoint slides for people. And they have to operate together. So you need to tell them how they're going to operate together. Eventually, they will figure that stuff out on their own. So what I'm saying is the people will need to be prepared to go into the design of both the prompts we know and the agents that most people at this point have not yet worked with, but many people have. And there need to be multiple paths of learning for those folks. Courses, practice sessions with feedback from human beings they feel comfortable with, individual tutoring that's private and confidential for people who are scared of the technology. We learned that when COVID hit and we all had to go onto Zoom. Those of us who've been on Zoom for a while were tutoring people who didn't know the first thing about it. And we were able in a few days to go from everything's in person to everything's over Zoom. It was amazing. People were saying, pinch me. I can't believe we just turned our aircraft carrier like this. And I think the same kind of thing will need to be done for AI prompting skills and for people to be honored for their special area of expertise so that they know that they're learning prompting skills not to replace their strengths, but to amplify their strengths. Maxim, I just said a mouthful. Are there things that you think people would like to hear? I know we need to close in a moment. Let me know what you'd like to see next.
Yeah. So Jonathan, what I feel is that even
Maxim, I'm not hearing you at all.
okay. So are you able to hear me now?
Can
Hold
on just a second. I can't figure out why the sound has disconnected. You can hear me fine, right?
Yep, I can hear you very well. Are you able to hear me okay?
All right. I'm not able to hear you.
You're not able to hear me at all, or you're not able to hear me well enough?
I will let you close because the microphone has stopped being operation. I mean, everything looks technically connected correctly.
Okay. I'm okay. So
yeah, and
the
people
audience
can hear us both.
Okay.
But I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. So no problem, Jonathan. So what I'll do is in addition to what you said, so Jonathan, even in a learning environment, it is not necessary that people need to have this expertise in prompt engineering or writing effective prompts. A lot of tools today
I
are
see
able
the
to.
problem. Teams has deleted my speaker and it says none, which is very odd.
Okay. So I think Jonathan, they are able to hear us both, so we can add some closing notes because we are having some audio issues as well. So Jonathan, what I was saying is that in systems today, right, you don't really have to be able to write prompts yourself. You can very well use systems which will guide you. They are able to guide a person through a conversation or through a learning journey or through an activity without the need to write effective prompts. The system itself guides you to be able to do what is required towards an outcome. For example, in our system, when we are doing this leadership journeys, what we do is we give them an activity, which is a reflective activity for leaders to ponder upon how they have done as leaders in the recent times or specific aspects, where the activity itself prompts them to say that, okay, this happened this week. How did you go about it? Right? So it is like a guided prompt where the user just has to answer, and there's agentic AI in the background which is able to pick it up and guide the user through the conversation through an outcome. So that is what we try to do within Eubrics, within our organizational development journey, where we have different kinds of AI activities which prompt users to think, which guide them to apply what they know, to reflect upon their abilities and drive towards better leadership skills or productivity or outcomes that they want. So the world of AI is moving very fast, both in the organizational development environment, in learning and development, as well as several other areas, right? So, and we are just talking about OD in itself, but there are areas of medicine, defense, um, general LLMs, education, enterprise, several other areas which are making drastic improvements and advancement in AI. And I'm sure that this is only going to get better and better as time goes by. So, Dr. Jonathan, thanks a lot for joining with us. We'll leave the
You're
room
welcome.
open for some questions. It was great hearing your thoughts on your experience and how you think organizations can start doing it in limited capacity when they have some challenge in terms of adoption or in terms of excitement or cautiousness, right? So this is something that was very useful to us. So we are opening this to the audience. Is there any
And I can
questions?
now hear you.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, I'd love to hear questions from the audience.
Okay. So one question, Jonathan, is that how can organizations effectively measure the impact and ROI of AI initiatives? Right. This is a question that we hear quite often as well. So any thoughts on
Yes.
this, Jonathan?
Yes. So, evaluation of learning and development, of talent development, has always been challenging. And having an expert in the L&D department, talent development department, who understands evaluation and how to get to ROI is very worthwhile. So one of the questions that I would have is, where is the organization, the talent development or HR organization, where is it on the scale of capability in evaluation? Because the answer to this question is very easy to implement if you've got the right capabilities. And I'll give you an example from the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology conference several years ago. There was a panel of people talking about just this topic. And there was a speaker from a very well-regarded company who showed how he had bootstrapped together information across the pipeline of activity of employee activity that resulted in customer satisfaction, and the finance people had already calculated that an X% increase in customer satisfaction resulted in a Y% increase in their spending on the organization's product. And so he was able to fill in the gaps. The first step is to determine what's the baseline. So prior to the learning taking place, or the AI being implemented, you need to figure out what are the things that where the skills where you can move the needle, the business outcomes where you can move the needle. And business outcomes can be things like customer satisfaction, customer spending, problems solved. Let's say I'm going to invent something common. Let's say your organization has a call center and they take calls and solve people's problems. They have all sorts of metrics already in place, like time to solve each type of difficulties of problems, how quickly they were able to resolve each kind of problem, the customer's perspective as to whether the problem got solved in their first communication, whether it got solved at all. There are all of these measures that you can use as outcomes. So talent development, preparing people in call centers can leverage those already existing metrics. But first you have to have a baseline. Then you have to figure out what behaviors are actually going to change and what capabilities are going to change. If you look at some task analysis for call centers, you'll see that they're just saying what the people do. They're not saying what the call center staff think. And that what they think is harder to measure, but it's critically important, because customers call with a problem they need solved, and problem solving takes place in the mind. So you need some way of measuring their skill at the most important skills that make the biggest impact for their customer. Whether that's an internal customer or an external customer, the people you're training usually have a customer. So if you're implementing AI, you can do the same thing. You can measure baseline before AI, measure in areas where you would like AI to move the needle. So let's say it is that your call center staff are flummoxed by certain types of customer problems, but you develop an AI that's got RAG in the background. It's got lots of technical data that that the technical people have fed it, and it has the ability to answer, and you've tested it, that it has the ability to answer difficult customer questions. And now you have that available for the call center staff to be able to see in real time answers to really challenging customer questions. And now you can see the extent to which AI provides problems solved in concert with the human being. And so those very metrics that the call center already gathers, the AI should be able to help the call center staff move the needle. I know that there are call centers I've called into as a customer that use AI as a bot. And my experience thus far has been really, it's insufficient. That the better for now is the hybrid. Does that answer the question,
Yep.
Akriti? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So,
Jonathan, so
yeah,
that I do believe that that answers the question well. So finding a baseline is essential. That is something that we try to do in our products as well. That the entry point of the system becomes establishing a baseline, and then we try to see how the person is progressing, and then be able to show that curve in terms of whether it's their skill score or in terms of their sales ability, in terms of our sales product. That's something that we try to do. Jonathan, in the interest of time, we will take one last question. Though there are more questions, we can take this question probably. How are universities exploring AI? In what use cases, and are there any ethical considerations? So, Jonathan, if you have a quick answer for this
yes.
before we wind up, I
So,
think that would be great.
for people who are really deeply interested in this, I recommend that you look for AI policies from universities and look for the really structured ones, because they will tell you in between the lines of their policies what use cases they are happy for people to use. Also, if you read Ethan Mollick's oneusefulthing.org, he's an professor of AI and entrepreneurship at, I think it's the Wharton School of Business, and he's been writing about AI for a decade now, more. And what you see there is there are faculty who understand that students have been using AI more voraciously than faculty have, and they're turning in papers written by AI. And so what we have to do is go back to old school techniques where you have a dialogue with the student, or the student writes a draft, you give feedback, and right then and there they write the next draft. There are universities that are saying we need to bring back the blue book. I understand the little blue books that we had, at least in American universities, where you give them an essay question and they have to handwrite in the blue book. And that's being brought back. The company that makes those is going up in revenue a lot. So there are use cases for the technical areas that students are learning about. So for instance, you can have students ask AI to produce a first draft of, let's take a talent development topic, an audience analysis. And so the AI produces a draft in an area, and then the student has to upgrade that draft. The student has to critique the AI's work. We found when we were working on a project where we needed to produce a workshop really quickly, I had a student design the workshop and I gave him feedback. And then I had the student go to AI and have AI, and he used two different AI engines to design the workshop, and saw the differences between their capabilities. And then I had him critique the workshop, and then I critiqued his critique, and then we delivered the workshop. The best solution was when AI produced the first draft, because it did better than the student could do, but the student then could use more strategic thinking that we have in our courses, strategic thinking for practical purposes, so that then he was able to critique the AI and propose what would be the upgraded version of the workshop. That gives you a hint of the kind of assignments that universities are going to be doing a lot more of. And Ethan Mollick is a big proponent of this. Give students requirement that they give you their prompt, they show you what AI's output was, they show you their critique of the AI's output, and they show you their improved draft. And that way you get to see how well they're thinking critically about the topic. I don't believe we can go back to the status quo prior to AI, where you just gave a prompt and the student wrote an essay. It's not enough anymore. Universities are using it also for a whole bunch of other things, in HR departments, in IT, in a wide variety of places. in writing emails. You give it a draft and you ask Microsoft Copilot to make this draft friendly to audience X, and then adjust it for audience Y and adjust it for audience Z, but you don't have it send it, you do the final edit. So there are people who find those kinds of things really helpful. I'll give you one last example. I work with the faculty, the staff, and with IT on projects that are improving university operations. And the head of IT said something about a requirements matrix, and I didn't know what that was. So I had Claude educate me on what's a requirements matrix, and just for good measure, I had OpenAI's deep research, the ChatGPT with deep research, do an answer to the same prompt. And I learned a lot. And I know from having done queries in my areas of expertise that some of what I read was incorrect. And I don't know which parts of what I read was incorrect because requirements matrix isn't my specialty. But I knew enough about the content that goes into a requirements matrix that I was able to really learn from it, so that in the next meeting, my team and IT were operating at a whole higher level, and it was really amazing. So there will be lots of those use cases that are about education, and lots of those use cases that will be about how a university operates behind the scenes as an organization, just like other organizations. I'd love to hear feedback from 2 or 3 people about what I've just said and how much you see it usable in your work or your organization's work. And then back to you, Maxim.
Sure. Yeah. So while we are waiting for the audience to pitch in their thoughts, I think what you said is absolutely spot on, Jonathan. AI is great for first drafts, so it is able to pick up a brief context and give a first draft or the first version, which would take a human being a lot of time to arrive at, right? So that is something which it does extremely well. And when the human being adds their expertise, their insight, their thought process, their human touch to it, that's when it becomes a real superpower, right? So that's what we recommend people to use AI as. Use it for eliminating all this regular routine work, boilerplate work, something that you do again and again, but don't let it eliminate the human touch that you bring in, right? Just retain that and save your time in terms of doing the repetitive work and bring your human insight and piece it together to deliver a great outcome, right? So that's how AI should be used, and that's where it will make the biggest difference. So thanks a lot, Dr. Jonathan, for your thoughts. It was really nice having you here. We also from the audience, it was really nice how you have widened the whole canvas of the AI in learning and education space. And Nikita is also mentioning that she spoke to Maine Maritime and where they were exploring for placement readiness, and every student was trying to get a personalized guidance. So that's something that we were trying to do, where we were helping students get personalized guidance for being not just ready for their interviews, but also being ready for their job, because a lot of students don't know what to expect in their first job. So what we were able to do is we were able to give them like an AI bot who could act as like an interviewer and practice for the interviews, as well as give them a lot of AI-based activities where there were simulations where the student could know what to expect at work, right? When you're talking to a coworker, what might a coworker say, right? You might have like a friendly coworker, a neutral coworker, or a peer who is very helpful, a peer who is very introverted, a peer who is asking for a lot of help, and how do you deal with these kind of situations, right? Because they're not really prepared for it. So these kind of simulations is what we helped my maritime students with as well. So that is something that has worked well for education, is what I feel. And thank you for adding your thoughts on the use cases yourself, Jonathan. So this is really helpful. Thank you for coming on the show. Love to hear your perspective, and thanks for everybody for joining in. Um, if you have any other questions, you can definitely send them out to us, and we will try to reach back to you and provide our answers. Thank you. Have a good the rest of the day. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Maxim, thank you for the collaboration. This was great.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye now.